Honorable Ntim for your MP for Asin South. Na wakasa enkankan dia fa LGBTQ plus WRWTQ chese di bebre ni nyina no efa gender identity and I say gender identification. Now I don't know why this should be an issue because Ghana ha no amamere mu no ye oba ne be ma. It is simple as that. We be say simplicity. So why should there be an issue? But then the issue, is coming as a result of a year book bia NACCA apprentice. Just eco senior high schools. Na physical education, yamo frano akosua na womo apprentice adie bi ewom. Ebinum say a oversight, ebi say a deliberate attempt. Yebekom Island TV Plus. Wajibra utie no. Best say like video no na wa share na subscribe. In fact, on this particular issue there, ye beje wadwen kire ewo ho. Say ade a wo say ye so even in any attempt to trivialize a issue no. Mayehu what you think about this particular issue. Now on government accountability series. In fact, programmer NDC aban no ahyase say only Ghana for ebedi ensawoso bedi ngita ho ewo aban no modern ba obo ne dwumadi ahodo a odie so o ma Ghana for ate ase na wo mo ahu na se obehwe nso a ade a megidi se aboa te enema mu e mamamfo nso te enema ase eno ye meme observation because government is by the people for the people and Abraham Lincoln definition of a democracy. Na eno ene Felix Ofosu Kwakye ono no ye spokesperson for government ede Ghana for ebedi egita ho ene obo ne ma bebre so sene aban yi ehya ase mfi ba ko atwa mu ene ma hodo a omo ene ne omo pese omo ye na omo de som Ghana for na ansakwa na yebekwa akotie ne Felix Ofosu Kwakye ekae on how the NDC government has saved the country billions and billions and billions of Ghana cedis as yebekaya under the Elsod administration Nana Adankwa Ekufuado Aragaga the show boy adudi na there were about 120 ministers. In fact, 120 ministers. At the papa bia, of course, well, we cannot say or much, but we saw what 120 ministers did for our country. And cathedral, so let us not deviate from the fact. We saw what the 120 ministers did. Now, Felix Ofosu Kwakye, I'm a Ghana for what I say, oh, and this is Abane there with the 60 ministers. In fact, may their soul rest in peace. Omane Boama, defense minister, or environmental minister, Honorable Mutala, Omunina, or more Atwana, no one see. It's the 58. With 58, and Nema outdoor anchor 120 ebehiano, and yet the same thing now, 58 ebehian. About 50 plus vehicles, Land Cruisers, and the board costing about $120,000. Or mine are saving for over 50 plus ministers. And so will be number because the NDC government, and a prudent spending not only New York because the cutting down of ministers alone has saved the country a couple of billions of Ghana cedis. Now, Chirichimu, Senya, Ubia, Ebabem, and Kanka ministers, Senya or Mino Sifa, a hair woman, a son woman. In fact, my India, Felix Ofosu Kwakye, a bra, one president on government accountability series.
On the savings that have been made, arising out of the cost-saving measures that President Mahama has introduced, I'm not sure that I put a specific figure on it. I don't recall ever putting a specific figure. What I can say for certain is that significant savings have been made, and it's not difficult to see why this is so. So, for instance, let's use two reference points. There was a time when we had 125 ministers or so under the Akufo-Addo administration. Currently, we have 58. It should have been 60, but for the unfortunate tragedy that occurred on August 6th. Now, even if you picked the figure of 60, and you did an analysis of what it would require to keep 125 people at posts as ministers and deputy ministers, that alone is significant. Let me give you practical examples. So, every minister of state, indeed, if I show you my appointment letter, you will see that there are things that you are entitled to enable you to do your work. One of them is a 4-wheel drive, a Land Cruiser. You are also entitled to a saloon car. These are duty post vehicles. They are not vehicles that are gifted to you. You use them as and when. But often it is the case that a new one is procured, because invariably by the time that a new government comes, what exists may not be roadworthy or may not have the capacity to perform at a high level that is expected. So often a new one will be procured. You are also entitled to accommodation. And that means that existing government bungalows would have to be refurbished for you to move in. If you are not given a bungalow, then you are given 20% of your basic salary as rent allowance every month, and it is at market rates. In addition to that, if you check my appointment letter, you see that you are entitled to fuel, a certain amount of fuel every week. And then there's a salary that you take, which these days is consolidated to include other perks and emoluments. And then in the days that ex gratia held sway, you will be paid ex gratia, which is 4 months out of every year that you serve in office. Now, the price of one Land Cruiser at current market rate, a standard Land Cruiser that a government official of the rank of a minister or deputy minister must use, is about $120,000, and I'm sure you all know it. There are some that are more expensive, but I think the standard one is $120,000. A saloon car of the sort that the minister or deputy minister would use is about $50,000 to $60,000, depending on the brand that is purchased for you. Now, if at a point there were 125 ministers, and now there are 60 or even 50, let's say 60, just for purpose of analysis, it means that you are avoiding purchasing 65 Land Cruisers at a unit cost of $120,000. You are not going to buy 65 saloon cars at a cost of between $50,000 to $60,000. You are not going to have to spend money refurbishing 65 bungalows or paying, in lieu of that, 20% of basic salaries of 65 people as rent allowance every month. You don't have to pay fuel. And you know how much it costs to fill a Land Cruiser in a saloon car.
Na enumu ana one journalist ebusa ne se nansen etimu hwe screen no so se wo hwe a physical education and health elective. I think they one of the newest subjects here and introduce you in the senior high. Na teacher man no actually say teacher ni be so na what dey actually dey na enumu no na how gender is defined. Se mu nyina mbe kai a LGBTQ de ben ye dia do bebre a Ghana ya battle ewo ho last year of the SR administration 2024 and the NDC for omo twe NPP for ase papa say ehene ne ha law no a ne Ekufuado be ya ne say well the NPP has the majority enti no an say Ntim. Now the bill will be sent to Ekufuado. Now Ekufuado just sign it. Any buy no manfo bebre no asene ho petition ni ho sem bebre afi ye hu ne koye na ban no efiri so na che say NDC ababa enso any ho technicalities bebre the bill has to be returned to parliament na ye debate na then sent back to his excellency general and send one ni nan se Ghana for say yempene yentia se LGBTQ de ben gay lesbian de ni na yempene so na buku yi mu no ana menim nipa otweroye na ewo explanation of sexual wo hwe ye ne a edaso explanation of sexual and reproductive health. Okay, can na bedu asia common terms no. Ana baako yahwere gender identity. Gender identity dey yoba ne bema. Yeni bi fufuro bia eka ho na yeni who manage to include this book ni mu. In fact, Felix Ofosu Kwakye edikan a dispute in the government accountability series say it was an oversight, and some Ghanaians should not be overzealous about adewe. Eno na Ntim for your honorable emunu ya osinetiko apai na ansane ye kwako tie ne honorable Ntim for your eka no mo hwe definition of the gender identity. It refers to a person's deeply felt internal experience of gender. We eni Ghana amamre eni twaka bia internal experience ben ye oba ne be ma, it's as simple as that. What is internal experience? Internal experience be say me am tie me say me feel say me oba ense muhunu be no an yeti hu okuro mu ha eni si asoso kora enti yese buku no e ba he na manfo ahase ka ho asem, because it has no place in our culture, which may or may not correspond with the sex assigned at birth. It can include being male, female, or rather a blend of both. This concept goes beyond the binary notion of gender, male and female, and recognizes the diversity of gender experiences and expressions. And the way in the muna omo try no edi na me de we nobody can tell me say it was not deliberate. Like how? Say no now just say I bought a foul into an answer. It was deliberate. And whoever did this should be reprimanded. And as you be there, it was any panel. Yes, coding no, because we are actually any Ghana mamre any check a behind. Na Ntim for you ya etikwa pai. Was it share Ghana for LGBT once and more Felix Kwakye was it the was it Ghana for you over zealous? Ghana for the taxpayer money, if you are and one banker. Na Ntim for you a lie. Honorable Ntim for you.
Yes, but Honorable, we have seen the Minister for Government Communications say that you are being overzealous and also you get carried away. But one thing he says is that you were in government when this was introduced into the curriculum. How do you respond to him?
That is most arrogant. You are voted to come to power, and the parent who voted for you, whose child you have introduced LGBT elements into their teaching and learning materials, teacher manuals, and being taught that they can have sexual pleasures and feelings very absurd, and gender should no longer be about male or female, and it's about whatever they feel, and they can even feel both, and you are poisoning their minds, hundreds of thousands of these children, and we have caught you red-handed and asking you to do the right thing. You are insulting us that we are being overzealous and we are being carried away. So the millions of parents who voted for you, whose children are in these secondary schools, whose taxpayers' money they use to pay you, you are using the taxpayers' money to pay yourself and to print textbooks that are LGBT laced and poisoned. You deliberately introduce it in. You have been caught red-handed. You have admitted you are going to find a way to remove it, and you are telling these parents that they're overzealous and they are carried away. That is the arrogance of power. This is the most arrogant height that a government can ever express. But that is what Ghana has voted for. So parents, you have voted a government in power, and you voted them who campaigned on deception that they were going to protect you from LGBT elements. Now you vote them in power. They have printed teacher manuals with LGBT promotion, and when you ask them questions, they say you are overzealous and you are carried away. If it must take us, some of us, to be the watchdogs, to be the gatekeepers, and to be vigilant and be carried away and overzealous, so that we will save the generation and the mindset and the values of our young generation, the young vulnerable ones, so that tomorrow LGBT, transgender matters, these absurdities that NDC wants to introduce into the constitution as they have proposed and have already introduced into the textbooks and into the classrooms are a thing of the past. You can call us names, but other parents, many thousands and millions of parents whose children are in Ghanaian schools will also be overzealous, and they will also be carried away, and they will do everything, I assure you, they will do everything to protect the sanity of their children, because whatever they teach them in schools is dangerous to remove it. Because if you're a parent, what you tell your children pretty much will be compared with what their teachers tell them. If their teachers tell them something else, it doesn't matter how much you preach them. If you're a pastor, it doesn't matter whatever you preach to your congregation. What they are taught in school carries greater weight. It doesn't matter the Quranic recitations. What their teachers tell them, it carries weight. And no amount of libation can be poured to unlearn that. So we must be overzealous. We must be carried away to protect the sanctity of our culture. And that is the arrogance of power of a government who came to lie to you that they were overzealous about protecting LGBT rights.
And you can work away. I know I say, Ghana for ya near pe, so who, as it was yakon a pen or dignity, aqua yachimo, Ghana for a penny or two aba, at the NDC for. Now can say, who way dear, and say, who way, why not as so. Set more by an amody, I say, and Polano, I say, yes, you say, Uncle School, and you teach a catch room, yeah, and no one room, we appear and Kwana can hear. And we're afraid Empress woman was him ever yasm. And Genie, only an idea, on the Munkoswa. Now, the time will come, Ghana for will show them the exit. Aha, Island TV Plus. What the bread, I would say, you know, my you are drinking. I will edify LGBTQ, WU, then, now, you know, if he has any place in our culture as Ghanaians, and I say, yes, so, aha, Island TV Plus. Subscribe to channel, no, the like video, no, na share ne afofro enche.